I'll kind of just jump right into it. This is an interview feature for Best for the Business, the 2020 edition. We started doing it last year, and it was really just, instead of a year-end awards or, the traditional award feature, I wanted to do something more of like an industry list. And I had talked to somebody else about it, and they said, yeah, it'd be a really cool feature to, kind of show some appreciation for the people that might not get the recognition that they deserve, or you know as much
That's
as
awesome.
the on-air performers. So I thought of you because I know your name over the years. I know you worked with was it
X-Pac.
X-Pac or
Yeah.
Afterdark directly?
It was X-Pac 12360. Yeah.
Okay, so I know you from there. Like, you kind of made your way up, and you sent some of the instant culture stuff, the non-related wrestling stuff over the years. And I mean, this year more than anything seems like you really blew up. Like, you're on, and I'm gonna probably miss a few, but
No, don't worry.
Fightful, Wrestle Talk, Sports Kita. You're still doing your own thing. I know you were doing a little bit for Lucha Culture or Lucha Central.
Yeah, so I was doing voiceover work for Lucha Central, and then I also do host a weekly show with F4W as well.
Okay, yep. All right. That one too. So I mean, you're everywhere now. Like, those are some of the biggest and most popular sites going today right now. And I just feel like, you're in an interesting position, not only because you're seeing all of this success and you're everywhere, but there seems to be an argument that, women in wrestling media, there's not as many opportunities, or people are shutting them out. And I feel like you're not only, making your own path and having success at it, but maybe you can, help others that want to break in and just, you know, share your journey, tell your story, I guess.
Right. So, I guess I'll start off by saying that I don't necessarily think that women are being held back. I feel like it's been incredibly, uh, trying to make it into this world of wrestling, which is male dominated. Everybody that I have worked with, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, it doesn't matter. They have been like extremely open, and they've given me so many opportunities or helped me along the way. I really just think it's a matter of, really going out there and putting the work. And I hold men and women to the exact same standard of like, hey, like if you're going to come out and you're going to try to break into the world of wrestling, like I expect you to work just as hard as me. It doesn't matter, or just as hard as whoever the top person in the field is. It doesn't matter if you're a man or if you're a woman. And, we are seeing examples of other women that have begun to do stuff or have been doing stuff and have found success. And they didn't find that success because, oh, they're women and they're coming into the, a male dominated industry. No, they're finding that success because they're working hard at it. And I'm sure there's, so many examples of that out there. And I'm just happy to be one of those few examples. And I hope that with people like myself, that people could be like, oh my God, like there's a space for women in this. All right, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to put everything that I've possibly got to like make it and become something like that and become maybe even bigger than Denise Salcedo or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not to exclude anyone, and it's just I'm most familiar with your work, and especially, like, I work with Robert. He works for Fightful and us. But another one's like Alicia too, like, made her own way. And then there's
Exactly.
some newer names like Ella, a wrestling gal. Like, I've started to see her work pop up more. She's doing work with Gaw and Stephanie from Steel Chair Magazine. So it's not to exclude anyone. It's just, I feel like you kind of have like maybe a blueprint or something. Like, there's just something, because like we said to start, I remember you from a few years ago doing X-Pac 12360, and now like you're doing your own thing, and it's just really cool to see, like, from beginning to right now.
Yeah, it makes me really happy that you say that because for a long time, I was seeing, so many other people get opportunities that I felt like, oh my God, like I could do that. I could be that person. And for a long time, it really felt like, I wasn't going to get those opportunities. And a lot of people don't know this because I think a lot of people think my start was with X-Pac 12360. But prior to that, I was working for, several years in the entertainment world. Like that's where I came from. I came from like the Hollywood world, like the press junkets and movie stuff and movie premieres and all of that. And I got to say that I think that's everything that I learned from that realm of that world are things that I have imported into the world of wrestling that maybe I saw other people weren't doing, or maybe I thought that I could, grow upon. So I think that's the reason why the things that I have done are a little bit different, just because I took the approach from this entertainment world. And, I was doing covering like red carpets and all of that stuff. So I really just incorporated what I learned from that world into this wrestling world. And so I started my YouTube channel March of 2018. I actually started it because I was so frustrated with everything in my life at that point. I was frustrated that I wasn't getting the right opportunities in the entertainment world. I was frustrated that I was nowhere even near close getting anywhere in the wrestling world. So it was like I had these two worlds that I so badly wanted to be a part of, but I wasn't a part of either of them. And I kept thinking to myself, I thought of people that I personally looked up to. And there were, some women that I knew of that, had started their own channels and, now they're doing their own thing. And I thought, man, that is so cool. That is exactly what I want to do. So that's when I decided to start Instinct Culture, which was March of 2018. And all I did was really implement everything that I learned from what I was already doing, because I was working freelance for other media platforms. I was working freelance for them. So I basically took from all of that and I incorporated that into my channel. And I didn't think people would respond to it. And so when people actually started responding to what I was doing, that's when I realized, like, okay, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. And the thing about YouTube is that it's so much work for very little reward. It takes a very long time to even see, reap those benefits and whatnot. And you're laughing because you know how it feels. There's a struggle. Yes. And so I was going out, this is a perfect example. It's really just wanting something bad enough and putting yourself out there and willing to do it and willing to risk everything you've got. For example, I was, one of the first events that I covered for my channel was Expo Lucha. I went out to Las Vegas. I didn't have money to go to Las Vegas. I went to Las Vegas. I got myself a press pass. I didn't know anybody there whatsoever. I didn't know anybody from Mass Republic. I didn't know anybody, but I applied. I bought my camera, which I didn't have money for either, put that on a credit card, basically did everything that I possibly could, got out there and did all of these interviews in both English and Spanish. I researched all of these luchadors and all of their history so that I could go out there and, bring out a pretty decent interview. And so I went out there, I did my interviews, I paid for everything myself. I didn't get any of the money back from my interviews, but I didn't care because that ended up leading to something else. So I noticed that you have to be willing to risk it all and put all your eggs into one basket and just really, keep working and hope that something eventually will come of it. And what I've learned is that one thing has led to another that has led to another in every single thing. So that's basically what I want to get at. Is when I started my YouTube channel, that really changed everything for me, because I really started showing the world what I can do instead of hoping that someone would give me that opportunity.
And, hoping somebody would notice.
Exactly.
Going back to your point about not seeing, maybe you're measuring it in analytics, but somebody's gonna notice and see everything you're putting into it. Not to steal the show or whatever, but
No,
I remember I
fine.
did something similar where I drove myself down to WrestleCade in North Carolina, or up. I was still in Florida, but it was nobody helped me, nobody told me what to do, and I was like, I think this would be cool to go spend the weekend there. And it actually ended up benefiting me. But i I think in certain instances you have to kind of make that investment in yourself. Don't look at it as okay, if I do A, I'm going to get B. I think it's invest in your future, and that's a part of it.
I 100% agree. You have to invest in yourself. And there's so many young creators that I see, because I also, I also wanted to branch out, and, I was already doing pop culture and wrestling. I started doing MMA as well. And I remember going out there and meeting other people that were just like me. And, they were walking around with their cameras and their stuff. And I would talk to people and I'd be like, hey, are you getting paid for this? And they'd be like, no, I'm just doing this for my own channel. And I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not the only one. This is great. And it's just, what you make of it. Yeah, you get, now my career has changed because I've gotten more opportunities. But for the first few years of my career, I had to not just work, what I wanted to do, but I also had to take additional work to supplement means. I mean, I live in Los Angeles. It's freaking expensive here. So I had to, take all of these multiple jobs while also trying to manage this career that I really wanted. But I finally feel like this year has been the year where people finally started to see me. And it's weird because so many people would say to me like, hey, keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, man, you guys are just telling me that because you don't have any other answers for me. But it really is true. Just keep doing what you're doing. And it sounds so dumb, but it really is what works.
Was WWE or was wrestling always the goal? Because you mentioned your work in entertainment. Was that the bridge to get to wrestling? Like, what do you have? Like, I know you have a vision board, but is that like eventually your big goal to get to work with one of these promotions, or is it maybe it's not as defined as you thought it originally was?
It's a lot more complicated than that. So this is essentially what went down. So when I grew up a wrestling fan, like everybody knows that. And I remember being in college and I studied broadcast journalism, and they really taught you that the only route to getting anywhere was by going to the smaller markets, doing news and like but nowhere Montana, someplace like that, some random city. And I was like, man, like I don't know if I really want to leave Los Angeles, whatever. So I realized that even though I love the production aspect of news, I didn't necessarily love news. And I remember telling my entire class, because at the end of the year, our teacher asked us like, hey, like tell us what you want to do, where you want to end up. And I stood up and I was like, well, I either want to be on E! News or I want to be interviewing wrestlers on TV. And I remember when I said that, I felt so embarrassed, Bill, like so embarrassed. I was like, why did I say that? I look like such an idiot. I was like, I'm here studying news and this is what I'm saying. Like, why did I say that? And so whatever, right? It was just, okay, that was just what I really wanted. But at that point, WWE hadn't really hired anybody that was sort of like me. They were hiring, women that looked very different from what I look like. And so I didn't really think that there was a chance of ever, being in that circle of stuff. And I always thought, well, wrestling's really like it's already covered by like the main people that are already doing it. They're going to be the ones that are doing it for the end of time. No one's going to care about what I have to say or anything like that. So I went into the entertainment world and I thought, okay, great. I want to work for E! News. I want to work for Access Hollywood because I saw that as a real possibility. And then I started doing all of that stuff. I started working for so many different, people. I got so many great opportunities, doing that interviewing everybody that's like huge in the entertainment world, whether it's like movies, music, influencers, whatever. And then I realized I wasn't all that happy. And then I landed this opportunity with Ara Lucha, which ended up not going anywhere, but I ended up being their ring announcer. So their ring announcer / MC. And I started doing that. I think it was December of 2017. And then I was like, man, like this is going pretty well. And so once I started doing that, it kind of opened more doors for me. I started meeting more people and I still hadn't started my YouTube channel. Then I got brought onto the X-Pac Went to 360 podcast. And then that's when I was like, you know what? I should really, start something of my own. So then I did. So then before I knew it, I'd had all of these different things going. And what I did too was I just like started, reaching out to anybody trying to see if I can do any sort of work for them. It didn't matter what the work was, I was going to do it. So anyway, so I did that. But to answer your question, for a long time, the goal was always WWE. That was always the goal, always 100%. And everything that I did was in hopes that they would one day notice me. That was everything. That was the goal. And now this year has been sort of a question mark for me because I'm starting to see that I don't necessarily have to be in WWE for a lot of cool things to happen. And like, this is an example of that. Like, I never thought that, you or WrestleZone would want to talk to me. And like, now I'm here. And why? Because of all the other things that I did before leading up to here. And it's just kind of those things that everything that happened this year was really accidental. I never once expected for them to like say, hey, Denise, we like you. Like, I remember reaching out to F4W last year because I wanted to work with them. Like, I was like, I'm a fan. I want to work with them. And, it just wasn't like the right moment. And then next thing you know, I just kept doing my thing. And then bam, I get that email from, F4W and they're like, hey, Denise, like, we're liking what you're doing. Let's bring you on. And I thought, oh my God. So next thing you know, I got my own show with them and I just freaked out because that was something that I never thought was possible. And it made me really, really happy. It sort of validated everything that I had done, really validated my work. So now I feel like my goals are sort of up in the air because I still would really much like to work with WWE. That's still something that like I feel that I could do so much if given the right opportunity. And I also feel like I could bring something very different to what they've already had. But at the same time, I also feel like I could bring something different to the wrestling media world that hasn't really been done before. So I don't really know where my future is going to go, but I'm excited though. I feel like I have two very good, solid possibilities.
Yeah, and I think this year proved to a lot of people, you know, tomorrow is uncertain, especially. I mean, every day changes with COVID, and two examples I'll use is I know you were on site for the WrestleMania 37 announcement and the SmackDown blue carpet premiere. You've done a lot of on-site camera work. So, what kind of challenges have you faced building your brand in the face of the pandemic? Like, obviously, you're relegated to being at home. So, what kind of adjustments have you had to make to ensure that you're still putting out the same quality content, but without being on site?
Right. So it's crazy because you mentioned that WrestleMania 37 one, and boy, how much has changed. I remember we were so happy. Everyone was there. Everybody there was like, it's finally happening in LA. It's been forever. SoFi Stadium was still, almost done being constructed at that point. And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I was so happy that day too, because, I was there doing interviews. And then like the first person that got the very first interview with like one of the biggest people there was me. And my first interview was with Roman Reigns. So it's just crazy like how much has changed since then. But to answer your question, what I did differently was that there was a lot of people with free time now. People weren't necessarily, traveling, going to all of these places. So I took advantage of that. And I started reaching out to people and I started saying like, hey, I'm Denise Salcedo, so-and-so, I do this channel, blah, blah, blah. I've interviewed so-and-so people. Would you like to come on to my channel? We'll talk about this, this, and that. And I started pitching myself to people and they liked what I had to say. They agreed to come on to my show, do an interview with me, whatever. And I just kind of also kept building my relationship with publicists, with all of these wrestling companies. And they, obviously when you're doing interviews with these wrestling companies, the publicists are there and they see your interviews. So they get to know you as an interviewer and as a person as well. So that really helps if if they're to your liking, if they like you and they like what you offer, then you can establish a relationship there and get even more interviews. So I kind of utilized all of those different things, but I went out and I reached out to people, I put my best foot forward and I found that a lot of people were willing to do interviews and they were willing to talk to you. And so that's how I did it. And before the pandemic, I started getting really nervous because I lost all of my work, all of it, all of like my freelance work that I was doing. It was gone. There was no more rent, nothing. And I remember being so depressed about it. I was like, man, like, what am I going to do? I'm on unemployment. Like, what the heck's going to happen to my life? And my fiance, he was the one that was like, Denise, you don't realize what you have. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you have an opportunity to do something here. You may have lost all of your work, but there's one thing you haven't lost. And I was like, what? He's like, you haven't lost your YouTube channel and you haven't lost the fact that you're a creator. No one can take that away from you, Denise. Like, you are a creator. And he was the one that sort of put that in my head. And I was like, I guess you're right. Like, I could create from here. And he's like, yes, like, do your imagination, do all the things you wish you had done when you weren't working those extra jobs to, make the money. And so, obviously I was able to throw myself in completely even more into my channel than I was previously because again, previously I had to work extra jobs. So what I did was I just threw myself into the channel. I kept doing my podcast work with Fightful and I just kept putting out content. I kept reaching out to people and just really kept going, even though there wasn't ever like a specific, hey, this is when you're going to explode or whatever. And then before I knew it, like people started, writing about me or like tweeting about me, like, oh, I like Denise, blah, blah, blah. And then I started seeing, people started reaching out to me like, hey, do you want to host this? Do you want to host that? And I'd say yes. And then before I knew it, everybody sort of wanted something from me. And that made me really, really happy because turns out that everything that I did led up to this point. And every video that I created, even if it wasn't wrestling related, because if you go on my channel, there's so many non-wrestling related videos up there, but every single video that I did led to somebody seeing something. And even the non-wrestling videos are the ones that have landed me work because they've seen what other stuff I'm able to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, the not the most interesting thing, but it's worth saying that you're not just creating wrestling specific content, even though it is wrestling content. Like, you're using your Hollywood background. Like, obviously, if you don't even know who Taylor Swift is or her music, like, that, you're a Swiftie, a very big fan, you incorporate that. Like, I feel like I've learned more about her from you and Jeremy Lambert than I could listening to like the
Yeah.
album. So I think you have like a unique approach. And like, what's the short term goal? What's the goal for 2021 now that you know kind of what's gonna happen, what we can expect, so to speak? Like, starting in March 2020 was very uncertain. Now you at least have a somewhat of an idea of what's coming up.
Right. So it's funny that you mentioned the whole non-wrestling stuff. And that was one of the things that I decided that I would do differently on my channel was incorporate a hybrid of pop culture and wrestling. Cause I was like, all right, I didn't have a real audience. So I could really post whatever I wanted on that channel. The advice that I got before starting my YouTube channel was talk about things that you love. And I was like, all right, well, I love Taylor Swift. I love wrestling. I love pop music. I love TV shows. Great. I'm going to post about all of that. That's what my channel is going to be, and that was the direction that I took it in. And even with like my wrestling interviews, I you know didn't really like go in there looking for all of these hardcore scoops. No, I went in there because I wanted to show so and so wrestler's personality to the fans. So even then, like, I took a different approach to my interviews to match the style of my channel so that it could blend in with everything else that I was doing. So I really went and called it an entertainment channel because that's what it was. And so I started building an audience both in wrestling and with Taylor Swift. So it was really crazy to see both of those worlds come together. And I thought, oh my God, people are going to unsubscribe. The wrestling fans are going to hate it. The Taylor Swift fans are going to hate it. I can't please everybody, but I'm so far now that I can't make separate channels. It's too late. I'm down this rabbit hole. I can't, like, you don't have no idea what a horrible battle it's been for me to decide whether or not this is going to be this channel or that channel. Then I was like, you know what? I'm doing what I'm doing. People are going to like it or they're going to hate it. That's it. I'm going to stick to what I'm doing. And so I decided to do that. But so, in doing all of that, it's been pretty interesting to see that a lot of people have actually responded. Like, I'll get messages from people and they're like, oh my God, I'm a Swiftie too. And I also like wrestling. That's so cool that you talk about both. And I was like, and I remember X-Pac actually told me this too. He's like, you'd be surprised how many people, those two worlds cross over it. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, look at you. You're example number one. And I was like, yeah, but that's weird. Like, I don't expect there to be very many Swifties and wrestling fans, but apparently there is. But in terms of like my goals for next year is really just to keep growing the channel, keep growing my brands. Like, that was my goal for this year. My goal for this year was to do as much work as I possibly could, to be seen as much as I possibly could. In January, I posted this Facebook post that said, I don't want to be part of a machine. I want to be a trailblazer. And I thought, God, you're so cheesy. Like, why would you post this? Like, this is so lame. Like, you don't even know how you're going to get that accomplished. And then lo and behold, people started saying like a bunch of good stuff about me. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So it kind of feels like it tied into that. And like, I have, like you said, I have vision boards and all of this stuff. And one of the things that I have was like a picture of me at the Fox carpet there. And I just remember being so proud of my work because of all the outlets that were there, of all the outlets that were at that event. None of them posted as many interviews as I did. None of them aside from WWE's content that they posted up and regarding that event, like, nobody had the coverage that I did. And I just remember being so proud. And I just put like so many like little scenes like around that picture because that was really, I wish that I could live that weekend over and over, all the time. But, that's my goal, is to just keep growing. I want to become somebody. I want to become somebody that is known for just like known, you know? I don't have like a specific, I have so many different things that I love from so many different people that I would love to incorporate all of that. Like I love Renee Young's personality. I love what the impact that she had in the wrestling world. I would love something like that. But I also love, Charlie Caruso. I love the fact that she isn't just wrestling, but she has sports there too. And I love that aspect of it. And I see myself like that, but not necessarily in the sports world, but in the entertainment world. And then, I also love Kayla Braxton's personality and how she has been able to do a little bit of everything in WWE. I love that as well. So it's and then there's a bunch of other people that I look up to, outside of wrestling, that I want to take pieces from all of those people and sort of like mix it in a pot and then like make my own version of that. So it's not like a very clear, concise, this is what I want. It's just like a little vision, of what I eventually would like to accomplish.
I think when you're looking for your avenue to find success, moving forward is more important than it being a straight line. Like, so, I mean, to sum it up, I think, it'd be great to get back to normal, get back to the in-person stuff, but I think you're doing really well for yourself, and it's been exciting to see all of these things happen because you are doing your own thing. And if you guys want to check out more of Denise's work, if you're not familiar, it's Linktree / Denise Salcedo. There's a ton of stuff there. F4W, Fightful, Instant Culture on YouTube, like Wrestle Talk, you're everywhere. Any final closing remarks?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, if people want to check out my work, I think the number one place is youtube.com/Denise Salcedo, but Twitter and Instagram is where I post everything. So that's like the easiest way to know what I'm up to, is Twitter and Instagram @_Denise Salcedo.
All right. Denise, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. Or
Thank
morning for
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you.